The liberal tradition, the liberal arts tradition brought to us by the Greeks all the way up through Oxford and European education and Liberty University has all celebrated the life of the mind because it comes from God and the freedom that comes from the freedom of conscience. And we've built that into our system. And so at Liberty and the United States, we've always been a culture of hope about the future, that we got better days again, we can all work together. And it is shocking because the left wants you to ignore all the science. All they do is talk about science and data and evidence, right? Well, I hate to break it to them, but the United States of America is the most free country on the face of the earth. Go look at the Castile Index or Heritage Foundation indexes of human freedom. Our poor, right, I would say we're the richest country on earth, and then the left comes back and says, yeah, but not the poor. Our poor are the richest on earth. That doesn't mean we can't do better, but the reason the poor aren't doing better is because the left says business is bad. There's no upper bound on what every young kid can do. That's my life's work. I'm in education, business education. There's no upper bound on what your kid can do. There's no upper bound on how rich everyone can get. Everyone can be a millionaire. Mm-hmm. For real. The left wants you to think, it's just straight Marxist stuff, right? Going way back, totally debunked. There's the capitalist class, they're the exploiters, and then there's the rest of you. We want you workers who are exploited to come with us, and we promise you utopia. Just give up your human rights and your Constitution and the rule of law in the meantime, and we promise you we'll make it better for you. And then you see Stalin and Lenin and Mao as the evidence of what they do deliver once you give them power. And so it's just a shocker to have the left and this new culture of fear, right? Instead of the culture of hope and redemption and human freedom, all the left is promising you is fear. Join us right now to take over. They're doing a cultural revolution like Mao did in the 60s in China. And what was that cultural revolution? What does every communist regime do? They get rid of religion. They separate you from your family. They separate you from Confucian ethics. They separate you from Chinese history and culture and everything that's beautiful and good. And they offer you a wall, a cone of silence, where the kids can't even look at the web. They have no access to any information at all.
Or they're blocked.
They're totally blocked. It's a totalitarian regime. They work 7 days a week, in case you didn't know, all day, every day. And if you complain, your social credit score goes down because Huawei and their tech regime has a file on every single person in China.
Every single person.
All
3 billion of them.
Facial recognition, everything going. And if you misbehave, your social credit score goes down and you don't get to rent a house. And you don't get to fly. And you don't get to buy a car. And your kid doesn't get to go to education. And you can't leave the country. Right? So that's what's going on in the world. No one knows this.
They have a social... What is it called? The
social credit score for every single person in China.
So if I complain about working 7 days a week, my score goes down.
Your score goes down.
If I complain about anything, my score goes down. If I don't do exactly what they say, my score goes down.
And they're starting to rank U.S. businesses. U.S. businesses are getting a social credit score. If you don't behave and say the right,
business.
You will not get to do business in China, the fastest growing market. Right?
I guess the NBA has a 100 score.
Oh, they're going to be. They got some problems.
Except for the GM on the Rockets.
They are in deep, and the NBA is digging their own grave because they're not going to be able to sustain it. Right? Where are the Nike sneakers made? By slaves, by the Uyghurs in China. 2 million in concentration camps in Western China right now.
They're making the Nikes.
Yeah, Turkish
enslaved
Chinese enslaved camps, concentration camp, Muslims. Don't hear a word from any of my Muslims or liberal brothers and sisters on this one, right? Re-education from God, Allah, to no God, China, right? Not a word from any. Where are the liberals on 2 million people in concentration camps these days? And
where are
Tibet.
Why nothing?
They're not liberals.
Why doesn't it fit their narrative?
Because they've shifted to the left, the regime of control.
The left is now, the far left is now the regime of control, face masks, etc. And so because what the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, is doing to the Uyghurs, putting them in concentration camps for slave labor, they look the other way because that doesn't fit their narrative.
Yeah, that's and even the moderates, right? I mean, I heard there was a congressperson in Richmond that had a CIA background, and is kind of a liberal and likes people, but not a word on China.
Abigail Spamager, I haven't heard a peep out of her.
And there's another one in Michigan, ran on the same thing, took out Bishop up there, a great Republican in Michigan. Both CIA background, not one peep.
Yeah.
Where's the expertise that was promised?
Right.
Where's the thundering down on China? Nothing.
Zero. Crickets.
And that ought to tell you everything,
Crickets.
right? So when you vote, right, everyone gets triggered by Trump, right? Get over the trigger. You're not voting for a personality contest of Trump versus Biden. You're voting for hope and a regime based on the Constitution and human freedom versus a regime under Biden is a shell. Everybody knows he'll be replaced in a year, right? So keep your eye on that VP slot. Everybody knows, right? The Democrats tell you that at the high levels. He's going to last a year, and whoever the VP is, they're the president. And they're all going to be shills for China and just the usual pay to play, right? The Marxists are now neo-Marxists. So it's not just capitalist versus worker. Now it's exploiter versus exploited. Mm-hmm. And they've got a bucket to put you in. Boy, I know you got a grievance, so we're going to put you in the bucket A, right? You're complainer number one. And if you think that's a healthy setup to build your future on and to leave to your kids the complainer culture, that everybody's in the grievance industry, and we're going to give you free education, free this, free that, free housing, right? AOC's out promising free housing this week. That ain't going to work. And I thought Americans knew better, but I am just shocked to see. So the silence by the moderates and the Democrats doesn't mean a thing. They're placeholders. They still vote 95% with Pelosi, and everybody knows that. Go look up the voting records. You're not voting for the candidate hugging puppies on the TV, right? You're voting for either a person who's going to back Trump going against China, or you're voting for Biden on the Democrat side and someone that's going to go pro-China and keep the jobs flowing to China and not back into the U.S. And it's the biggest cynical ploy for the Democrats, of all people now, to say that they're for the poor is just a laughingstock, right? All the billionaire class is Democrat now. Amazon, CNN, all the major news media. The New York Times just got called out yesterday. Everybody read that piece by Beery. She's an American hero. Facebook, Twitter,
tell us
Google.
about that piece by Beery, because a lot of our listeners don't have access to the New York Times. They don't pay for to get behind the paywall.
Yep, she's a probably the best way to characterize her is probably moderate / a little bit left leaning, but has a conscience.
And she's been an editor with the Times for a long time.
Yeah,
right.
And came on back in 2016 when Trump wins, and the New York Times and the Washington Post and CNN all said, "Whoops, we don't understand this country at all," because we just voted in Trump. And we have no conception of what just happened. They're all crying, right? The night of the win, they're all crying. And so they hire her in, and she promised to bring in all sides, all views, the traditional liberal take on things. And she did. There's a laundry list of the folks she brought in, of ethnic variation across countries, across ideological lines. They're not all. She's not a conservative, so that's not what I'm rooting for, right? But she brought in a bunch of new leftist voices, some moderates, maybe a conservative or two here, and she has been mocked and ridiculed and threatened by all of her colleagues. She lays it out. She can name names, and that's the culture of fear I'm talking about. The New York Times, and she says, in a galaxy far away, or some line like this, the New York Times was founded to represent all views and to provide news. She says now it's become I wish I had the line. She writes so well, but she basically says it's the truth is known by a select few, and it's to be pushed down on the people. It's not to be questioned. It's not to discover together. It's a top-down enterprise where a select elite chosen have the truth and usher it down. And if you disagree, you're mocked and ridiculed. And, the legal lines, she made it very clear, the legal lines on abuse were crossed there as well. And so quite a shocking piece. And that's the culture, of course, of the Washington Post, CNN, the Sunday talk shows, Chuck Todd.
The whole thing.
Right. It's he came in and said, we're going to be truthful, we're going to be fair, we're going to be objective. And they they do everything they can to take one snippet soundbite from you and create your entire image, and they can do it. I was shocked. They can turn your image upside down in 5 seconds.
Well, they've done it to you. We've seen them do it to you.
And Trump. They're trying to do it to Trump.
But we saw it to do it to you in the campaign. That's why you wouldn't give interviews, because you talk for 20 minutes. They take 2 lines, take it out of context, then hit you over the head with it.
Yeah. And 3 ethics complaints in the final month before the election. I had the head of Harvard Economics come in, bail me out, tell the Washington Post they're full of baloney. And that story shows up after the election on page 82 in section F. And so that's the game. But Trump, the reason Trump is unique is he's got the big megaphone, and he's right back at him.
Do you feel, Dave, like I did yesterday, that maybe, just maybe, we're turning the corner here?
Yeah, I do. Everybody knows the American memory is a month or 2, right? So we got 4 months to go, plenty of time. The data dump on Biden is going to come out. You haven't even heard the facts on his son yet, right? His son got a $1 billion deal when Biden flew him over to China, right? So, I mean, it doesn't get any more swampy than that one example. We had one of the highest, most coveted Chinese intelligence assets fled to our embassy, related to Bo, and that, right? You may remember that name. One of the elite CCP families. And when I say my grievances are with China, I am not talking the Chinese people, right? They are being abused and tortured by the CCP. When I say China, I mean CCP, just so everyone gets the memo on that one. We had an intelligence asset. Our CIA operatives have lost lives in the dozens by China. And guess who lets them go?
Who?
Joe Biden. Overrules our State Department, and then Hillary Clinton, in her own book, has a line that says, this will make the Chinese happy. Right? And so not only are we not at war with them, they're at war with us, right? If you don't know this, I mean, go read a few books, right? The Chinese wrote it themselves. 1999, they got a book called Unrestricted Warfare, written by 2 colonels who are now generals. And by the way, in 1999, they mentioned the attack on the trade towers. It's one of the unrestricted warfare means and methods, right? So just saying. And then on our side, we got some heroes. Bill Gertz with the Washington Times wrote a book called...
Do you think they knew about this virus, and everybody understands the cover-up because of what they do. But do you think they purposely released it to destroy the U.S. economy and get rid of Trump? Did they have a meeting and say, let's export this virus to the West and see what the hell happens?
I'll just tell you this, right? You can go out. There's a guy on the chamber. I'm no friends with the U.S. Chamber, right? But there's a guy on the chamber that's got a thing called the China Beige Book. It's not the Federal Reserve Beige Book. It's the best data source. The lights were blinking in 2018 on the Chinese economy. It used to be grow at 10% a year, then 9%, and then they admitted 8%, and then they said 7%, and then they going down to 6.5%. So Xi Jinping is in big trouble because the one thing he's got to do is feed that middle class. He's got to feed 1.4 billion, or he's gone. The CCP's gone, right? Xi Jinping's the head of China. So by the third quarter of 2019, in the Beige Book, all red lights are on high alert. The Chinese economy across all sectors is imploding. Everybody knows you build the first airport, the rate of return is high in economics. You build the second one, the rate of return goes down. You build the third airport like China does in the same city, might be a little overkill. Rate of return 0. Well, they're in trouble on that story over and over and over. All lights are blinking. The third quarter of 2019, all red lights blinking. The virus goes out the fourth quarter of 2019. So I'm not saying, but I'm just saying quite a coincidence. And then what we do know is they had a sunk cost on their hand. The virus did get out. It got out from Wuhan, which is 20 miles from the level 4 lab. That's a fact. Everybody knows it. China knows it. So then you got a sunk cost on your hands, right? So if they admit it to the world, they look terrible. If they try to play nice ball, they don't even know what nice ball is. How does a totalitarian regime that doesn't even know what a liberal order is play good guy? So that's foreign. So they got a sunk cost on their hand. No matter what they do, they're the bad guy. So my view is they found out either they sent it, created it, and all of this was intentional, which could be. We don't have the evidence there yet. But what we do know for sure is they had a terrible sunk cost. They're going to be the bad guy no matter what. And they said, if we're going down, you're going down with us. And they opened up the spigots and opened up the airways and sent everybody to Florida, San Francisco, Milan, Italy, all over the world. And kaboom. And that's the cause of our economic downturn. That's the cause of all the misery in your family right now. That's the cause of 40 million Americans being displaced from the workforce.
The real question in our mind is, did they create the virus for this reason?
Right.
Or did the virus just happen through a mistake or whatever, somebody touching the bat blood or however this happened? And then they said, it just kind of dropped in their lap, and then they were screwed. They had a sunk cost.
Yep.
And they said, well, let's take everybody else down with us, so the focus would go off us. And
and it doesn't really matter.
The benefit is we can get rid of Trump.
Yeah. And that's right. And so it really doesn't matter, right? The woman who was one of the women who ran, these are PhD, very bright people, head of the Chinese Wuhan lab. She said, "Oh my God, I hope that's not my virus, my lab." Right? I mean, so that, the American people are a good people, right? Judeo-Christian. We always do the right thing after we failed doing all the wrong things. And so we always give the benefit of the doubt because we're a generous, kind people. And the Chinese are exploiting our goodwill. When you read these books, right, Unrestricted Warfare, and the Robert Spalding, the generals, wrote a great book too. When you read those books,
I love to have Spalding.
Yeah,
in fact,
he's phenomenal.
He called me the other day.
Stealth War is his book.
Yeah, I got to go, Dave. We're going to get to the bottom of the hour.
Got it.
Dave Bratt with us, Dean of the Business School here in Liberty University in Lynchburg.